My cop wife chose her ex over my life. I walked away quietly, then her entire career collapsed. After the car accident, I filed for divorce for my wife, the traffic police captain. As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, she looked at me with confusion and asked, "Is it because I saved Jean Q first during the accident and left you aside?" I nodded calmly, and panic instantly flickered across her face in the early spring of Jiangchong. The wind still carried the lingering chill of late frost. As I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I clutched the dark red divorce certificate. In my hand, the texture against my fingertips was rough, much like the self-esteem I had worn down repeatedly over the 3 years of this marriage. Suddenly, a sharp cramp seized my stomach, followed by a dull ache from the fractured ribs in my chest. It had been a full 48 hours since the accident, and I hadn't gone to the hospital. I just bought 2 painkillers at a pharmacy because at the scene of that horrific crash, my wife, Sean Rubing, the traffic police captain, hadn't even spared me a single glance. "Lin Shurao, let's talk." A cold voice came from behind me. I stopped and turned around. Sean Rubing stood there in her crisp, dark blue police uniform, which made her look even more commanding and sharp, as cold and untouchable as a piece of flawless porcelain. Her eyes were always so piercing, as if they could see through every traffic violator's lies. Yet, they never noticed the gauze beneath my shirt, soaked through with blood that had already begun to stick to my skin. "We've already got the certificate. What's there to talk about?" I said calmly, looking at her. Shin Rubing frowned slightly, that habitual condescending scrutiny surfacing again. She seemed unaccustomed to my unruffled tone. In her mind, Lin Sha was supposed to be the one waiting at home, wearing an apron, always gentle and forbearing. The full-time husband. "You're still throwing a tantrum," she said, taking half a step closer, her tone tinged with weariness and impatience. "Is it just because I saved Jean Ku first during the accident and left you aside?" I looked at her delicate face and suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. "Yes." I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. Shin Rubing froze. She clearly hadn't expected me to admit it so bluntly. In her script, I was supposed to gravel for an explanation or bitterly accuse her, not act as if I were discussing some trivial matter unrelated to me. "Lin Shurao, be reasonable." She sighed as if she'd found the root of the problem, her tone shifting back to a lecturing one. How urgent was the situation back then? Jahanka's car was hanging on the edge of the guardrail. He has severe phobia and the river was right below. If I hadn't pulled him out first, he would have had a mental breakdown. And you just hit the airbag. Aside from a few minor scrapes, you could still get out and walk around as a man. Can't you be a little more magnanimous? I looked down at the floor tiles beneath my feet. The cracks still held remnants of last night's rain. Her so-called walking around was because the moment the truck slammed into us, I had forcibly twisted the steering wheel, turning my driver's seat into the point of impact. Amid the thunderous crash of metal, I used my last shred of consciousness to unbuckle my seatbelt and stumble out of the car just to make sure she was safe. But when I walked up to her covered in blood, the heroic traffic police captain was tightly holding Jiangu, who had collapsed on the ground, whispering soothing words to him without even sparing me a sidelong glance. "Magnanimous." I repeated the word, a bitter smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Shin Rubing, "Do you know? That's the highest compliment you've given me in 3 years." "What do you mean?" Her gaze instantly turned icy. "Lin Xia, don't be sarcastic. I know you're upset. Zhang Xiu just came back from abroad. He has no foundation in Zhang as an old classmate. It's only natural for me to look out for him a bit more. As for the divorce, I hope you'll calm down in a few days and we'll go get remarried. The Shan family can't do without you. My dad's medication and all those trivial household matters. You handle them best." I looked at her as if she were a species I had never known before. In her eyes, my worth as a husband was nothing more than a convenient butler for the Shin family and a private nurse for her father. "No need." I turned around, my back to her, gazing at the sparse crowd in the Civil Affairs Bureau Square. Shin Rubing, the life-saving favor your father gave me 3 years ago. I've repaid it in full by slaving away like a beast of burden. From this moment on, I owe you nothing and I owe the Shin family nothing. Lin Shurao, stop right there. Shin Rubing's voice rose a few notches, laced with the fury of being defied. Just then, a silver-white Porsche screeched to a halt arrogantly at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Tires squealing, the door swung open, and Jiangu stepped out, clutching a bouquet of vibrant red roses. He was dressed in a tailored, high-end suit, his hair meticulously styled, and a faint, almost imperceptible smirk of provocation hung on his slightly effeminate face. Rubing, are the formalities done? Jin-Ku strode over quickly, naturally positioning himself beside Shin Rubing as if he were the rightful partner. When his gaze swept over the divorce certificate in my hand, a flicker of triumph flashed in his eyes. Brother Lin, I'm really sorry because of me. Things have come to this between you and Rubing. Jianga's tone was sincere, but his hand casually draped over Shin Ruob's shoulder. Rubing was just doing her duty. She's a cop after all. Helping the weak and rescuing the distressed is her calling. And you? How can you force her into a divorce over something so trivial? A real man with such a narrow mind will have a hard time making his way in society. Shan Rubing didn't push Jing's hand away. She just stared coldly at me as if waiting for me to apologize to Jiangu or beg for her forgiveness. I said nothing. I simply stood there quietly watching the pair before me. The pain in my chest grew sharper and I knew it was a sign of internal bleeding. My vision began to blur slightly, but I kept my back straight. I had endured for 3 years, suppressed myself for 3 years, hiding the Lin Sha who once ruled the business world and made countless enemies tremble. Inside a mediocre shell, all because on his deathbed, Old Man Shan had held my hand and said, Lin Xiao, Rubing has a proud nature. Take care of her. Now that dying wish could be thrown into the trash. Lin Shurao, Jiangu is talking to you. Where are your manners? Shin Ruob's brow furrowed deeper. When I didn't respond, I laughed. It was the first time in 3 years I had laughed so freely, so coldly. Manners are for people, not for animals. Who are you calling an animal? Jiang Ke's face flushed crimson. He stepped forward, lowering his voice to a whisper in my ear. Lin Xiao, you're nothing now but a washed-up dog stripped of everything. Without the Shan family, you can't even get a sip of water in Jiang. Get lost while you still can, or I'll make sure you disappear from this city. I turned my head, meeting his sinister eyes. Is that so? I replied calmly, my tone terrifyingly steady. Then let's see who disappears first. Shin Rubing sensed the tension between us. She yanked Zhangu away, looking at me with disgust. Lin Shurao, you've disappointed me. I thought you were just mediocre. But now you've become this extreme and narrow-minded. Zhang's company is about to partner with the world-class Xiaolong Group. His future is something you, a man who only knows how to cook and shop, could never imagine. Get out before I decide to detain you for disrupting a public official's work. I didn't spare her another glance. I turned and walked step by step toward the intersection outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. With every step, my lungs burned like fire. Shin Rubing stood on the steps, watching that lonely, thin figure retreat. For some reason, her heart tightened inexplicably. For 3 years, no matter how late she came home, that man always left a light on and served her a bowl of steaming hot soup. But now, that retreating figure walked away with a resolve so cold and detached, as if it intended to sever every trace of the past 3 years entirely. Rubing, forget about him. This kind of man knows you're soft-hearted. Come on. I booked your favorite French restaurant to celebrate you being single again. Jin-Ku tugged at her hand, his face full of tenderness. Shin Rubing took a deep breath, suppressing the inexplicable panic rising in her chest. Let's go. Just as they were about to get into the car, a low, dense roar suddenly erupted from the intersection not far away. It wasn't the sound of an ordinary sports car. It was the beastly growl of a top-tier armored engine. as a traffic cop. Shin Rubing's professional instincts made her turn to look. A column of black vehicles was crossing the plaza in an almost domineering formation. Leading the pack were 3 black Hummer armored cars. And at the center of the convoy, a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom was flanked. The silver spirit of ecstasy on the hood gleamed coldly in the sunlight. It was a sighting had never seen before. The convoy slowly pulled over at the curb, blocking Janka's Porsche. Django wanted to lose his temper, but when he saw the black and gold license plate on the Rolls-Royce, he froze in place, cold sweat streaming down his back. That was the mark of the top-tier elite from the capital circle under Shenuabing's stunned gaze. The door of the middle Rolls-Royce opened, and an elderly man in a tailcoat with graying hair but sharp eyes quickly stepped out, ignoring all the stares around him. He walked straight toward the slightly disheveled man standing by the roadside. That man was Lin Sha, the one Shin Rubing had just pushed away, dismissing as a mediocre burden. The old man stopped 3 steps in front of Lin Sha, and then, under the disbelieving eyes of everyone, he bent deeply at the waist, his back parallel to the ground. "Young master, this old servant arrived late. Please punish me." His voice was low, but in the empty plaza, it exploded like a thunderclap. Lin Sha, who had been slightly hunched, slowly straightened his back. His once dull eyes became deep and sharp, like a blade drawn from its sheath, instantly cutting through all the previous meekness. He took the black trench coat the old man handed him, draped it over his shoulders, casually, covering the blood-stained old shirt. "Uncle Su, did you bring the things?" Lin Ho's voice was no longer soft. It carried the weight of someone long accustomed to authority. "Yes, the seal of the president of the Jiangqing branch of the Xiaolong Group, and the order to unfreeze all assets under your name." Uncle Su respectfully handed over a dark gold ring. Lin Sha took the ring and slowly slid it onto the middle finger of his left hand. He turned his head, and from a dozen meters away, he coldly looked at Shin Rubing and Jiang Ku on the steps. At that moment, Shin Rubing felt as if her breath was being choked off by an invisible hand. It was a look she had never seen in Lin Shao's eyes before. No warmth, no resentment, only the indifferent gaze of someone looking down at ants. "Rubing, is that Lin Shao?" Jing's voice trembled. The red roses in his hand fell to the ground, scattered by the wind. Shin Rubing didn't answer. She watched Lin Sha get into the Rolls-Royce, watched the massive black convoy recede like a tide. Only when the cars had completely disappeared did she realize her hands and feet had turned icy cold. "Lin Sha, who exactly is he?" she murmured to herself. Meanwhile, in the smoothly moving back seat of the Rolls-Royce, Lin Sha leaned against the leather seat, his face pale to the point of translucence. "Young master, your complexion is off." Uncle Su noticed the anomaly through the rear-view mirror, his voice suddenly urgent. "Are you injured?" That day of the car accident, Shin Rubing thought it was just a scratch. Lin Shurao closed his eyes, a trace of blood seeping from the corner of his lips. "Go to St. Mary's Hospital. Notify Guing Yen. From now on, cut off all funding to the Shan family. Also, look into Jianggu." "Understood." Outside the car window, the scenery of Jiangqing City blurred past. Lin Xia knew that this counterattack for dignity and power had only just begun. 3 years of restraint wasn't cowardice. It was the accumulation of enough strength to destroy everything. Now the new king had returned. Those who owed him, insulted him, or betrayed him would all have to pay back every single debt with his own hands. Zhanging City Public Security Bureau. Traffic Command Center Monitoring Hall. The hall was dimly lit with only dozens of massive electronic screens flickering with cold blue light. Shin Rubing stood before the main console, her deep blue police uniform looking especially icy under the glow of the screens. Her complexion was poor, even pale, since the scene at the Civil Affairs Bureau entrance. Her mind kept replaying the image of Lin Sha getting into that Rolls-Royce. That unfamiliar feeling was like a thin steel wire tightening around her chest with a dull ache. "Captain Shin." The high-definition road surveillance footage from the day of the accident has been retrieved along with the cloud data from the car's dashcam. Technician Xia Wang said cautiously, breaking the dead silence. Xin Rubing took a deep breath, her voice a bit hoarse. "Play it." The screen flickered, and the image returned to that rainy night 48 hours ago. In the footage, Lin Sha was driving the second-hand domestic SUV carrying Xin Rubing, who had just gotten off work. The rain was heavy, visibility blurry. Xin Rubing was sitting in the passenger seat at the time, looking down and replying to Jing's messages, not even noticing the heavy truck speeding wildly and swerving unsteadily from the side intersection. Just as the truck was about to crash into the SUV, Lin Zhao's movements in the footage were astonishingly fast. Without any hesitation, he violently turned the steering wheel a full 1.5 rotations to the left. Xin Ruob's pupils contracted sharply. As a seasoned traffic officer, she understood the meaning of this move all too well. In the face of an unavoidable collision, the driver chose to sacrifice the driver's seat, leaving the strongest body frame and the safest impact point for the passenger. Boom! The deafening crash was terrifying. Even through the screen, the driver's side of the SUV instantly caved in a large chunk and the shattered windshield flew off like countless bullets. In the footage, Lin Zhao's head slammed heavily into the side airbag, blood gushing instantly like a torrent, staining his entire white shirt red. Xin Rubing's fingers dug into the marble countertop, her nails turning blue. The surveillance continued playing. She saw Lin Sha, after being unconscious for a few seconds, force open the already deformed door and stumble out of the car. His right hand was bent at an odd angle, seemingly broken, but as if he couldn't feel the pain. He crawled step by step toward the passenger side, trying to pull her, who was still unconscious. However, at that moment, Django's silver Porsche appeared in the surveillance footage. Django screamed, stopped the car, rushed over, and hugged the now awake Xin Rubing. Xin Rubing remembered the next part clearly. She had woken up at that moment, her eyes full of panic, looking at Django, who claimed he had almost fallen into the river to save her. Meanwhile, Lin Sha, his face covered in blood, stood a few meters away in the shadows. In the footage, Xin Rubing pushed away Lin Xiao, who was trying to approach, and said something with a disgusted tone. Now, through the enhanced audio track of the surveillance, she heard what she had said at the time. She said, "Lin Xiao, stop getting in the way here. Go check's car. If something happens to him, can you afford it?" Lin Sha in the surveillance froze. His hand, half extended to check her wound, trembled violently in midair, then slowly withdrew and slipped into his blood-stained pocket. He didn't say another word, just stood there quietly like an outsider watching her hold another man. "Captain Xin, do you want to keep watching?" Xia Wang asked in a low voice, not even daring to look up at Xin Rubing's expression. Xin Rubing took a deep breath. Her voice, "Turn it off." Xin Rubing spun around abruptly and strode out of the surveillance room, her step slightly unsteady. For 3 years, she had always believed Lin Sha was nothing more than a meek, spineless man, clinging to the stability of the Shan family. She even thought he was somewhat pathetic. So when the wealthy, witty Jiang Ku appeared, the scales in her heart unconsciously tipped. She had assumed that, on the day of the car accident, Lin Sha had simply been lucky to escape unscathed. But the truth was, he had taken the hit for her, shielding her with his own life, and she had repaid him with a resounding slap. "Lin Xiao, how many more things are you hiding from me?" Xin Rubing sped down the road toward Street Mary's private hospital. All she wanted now was to find him, confront him, or make it up to him. Street Mary's private hospital was the top-tier medical institution in Jiangcheng. Its wards were charged by the day, every nurse trained in international etiquette, and only the wealthy and powerful walked through its doors. When Xin Rubing arrived at the VIP waiting area, she heard a shrill, grating voice from a distance. "Lin Sha, you ungrateful, heartless bastard. Get out here. You think hiding in this expensive hospital means I can't find you. Where did you get the money to stay in a place like this? Did you steal the deed to Arzhan family house and pawn it off? Shin Rubing's heart sank. It was her mother, Mrs. Shan. The woman stood there clutching a Hermes bag, hands on her hips, making a scene at the entrance to the VIP corridor. Several security guards looked uneasy but dared not forcibly remove her, intimidated by the wealthy madam act she was putting on. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Shrubing rushed over and grabbed her mother's arm. Rubing perfect timing. Mrs. Shan seized her daughter's hand, her face twisted with rage. "That useless loser actually dared to divorce you. Fine, let him go." But he had the nerve to hide away private savings. "Look, this is Est Mary's. One night stay here costs more than half a year's worth of our food expenses. He's been eating and drinking at our house for years. Even the socks he wears were bought by you. Where did he get that kind of money?" "Mom, stop it." Lin Sha was injured in the car accident. Shin Rubing tried to explain, but her voice was weak and feeble. "Injured? I think he's just playing dead." Mrs. Shan sneered venomously. "He's trying to squeeze money out of our Shin family. No way. I'm gonna make him spit it all out today, and he has to apologize to Jiangu." Jean Siu said if it weren't for Lin Sha jerking the wheel that day, his car wouldn't have spun out of control just as Mrs. Shin was about to charge into the ward corridor again. A cold, crisp female voice rang out from the corner of the hallway. "Mrs. Shin, since you're so fond of talking about money, our legal department has quite a few bills we'd like you to review." Shin Rubing looked up. A woman in a dark gray professional suit, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, walked slowly toward them. Behind her followed 8 burly men in black suits and sunglasses, each step exuding an overwhelming sense of pressure. It was Guing Yen, the executive chief of the Jianging branch of Zheilong Group, and Lin Xiao's first sharp blade after his return. "And who do you think you are? Who gave you the right to speak here?" Mrs. Shan, accustomed to throwing her weight around at home, Ginjin with disdain. "I'm Lin Zhao's mother-in-law. I'm disciplining my family's live-in son-in-law. What business is it of yours to stick your nose in?" Gushing Yen stopped 3 steps away from Mrs. Shan, a mocking smile curling at the corner of her lips. "First of all, Mr. Lin has already dissolved his marital relationship with Ms. Shin Rubing. Legally, you have no connection to Mr. Lin whatsoever. Secondly," Ginjian adjusted her glasses, her gaze suddenly sharp. "Over the past 3 years, Mr. Lin has secretly provided the Shin family company with an interest-free loan of 380 million yuan, as well as repaid the underground casino usury debts you incurred. We have compiled all the records if you continue to cause trouble here. Mr. Lin's instructions are that you must repay the full amount, including interest, within 3 days." Mother Shan's face turned deathly pale in an instant, her lips trembling. You're talking nonsense. What sponsorship? That's our family's own business acumen." "Business acumen." Guing Yen let out a cold laugh, taking a document from her assistant and slapping it onto Mother Shin's face with a sharp crack. "The Shin Corporation was already insolvent 3 years ago. If Mr. Lin hadn't mobilized the global capital chain to force a transfusion, your whole family would be begging under a bridge right now. And here's another one. Last year, the 10 million you lost in Las Vegas. Mr. Lin settled that account, too." Shan Rubing froze in place. She had always believed that the Shan family's business had been thriving these past few years thanks to her father's old connections and her own authority's protection. She never knew that the man who quietly mopped the floors at home and drove her to and from work had been propping up the entire Shan family sky behind the scenes. You must be some vixen Lin Shurao keeps on the side, deliberately coming to trick me." Mother Shan flew into a rage, raising her hand to slap Ginjin across the face. Slap. A crisp sound rang out, but it wasn't Ginjin who got hit. Yuing Yian firmly caught Mother Shan's wrist and delivered a backhanded slap, striking hard across Mother Shin's heavily powdered face. Mother Shan spun around from the force, collapsing directly to the ground, clutching her cheek. Stunned for a long moment, "Mom!" Shin Ruobining cried out, trying to rush forward. But two bodyguards firmly blocked her. Captain Shin, out of respect for your past as Mr. Lin's wife, I'll give you a piece of advice, Guing Yen said, looking down at Shin Rubing with eyes as cold as ice. Some people once missed are an abyss. Mr. Lin's patience has run out. If your Shin family dares to pester him again, I won't hesitate to make the Shin Corporation vanish from Jiang City. Entirely. I want to see him. Let me see Lin Shurao. Shan Rubing ignored her mother, staring at Ginjian with a desperate, almost pleading persistence. Gushing paused for a moment as if receiving some instruction through her earpiece. Mr. Lin says to let Captain Shin in alone. As for this one, she glanced at Mother Shin still throwing a tantrum on the floor. Throw her out from now on at his tea. Mary's hospital. The Shin family and dogs are not allowed inside. You, how dare you? Mother Shin shrieked. But the bodyguards picked her up like a chicken and tossed her toward the end of the hallway. Shin Rubing, dazed and disheartened, followed Guin Yen toward the VIP ward. The further she walked, the heavier her heart grew. On both sides of the corridor, every 5M stood a fully armed security guard. Such a display was no less than what the mayor of Jiang City would command. When they reached the deepest suite, Guing Yen stopped. Mr. Lin is waiting for you inside. Shan Rubing pushed open the door before the massive floor toe-ceiling window. Lin Xiao sat in a loose hospital gown draped in a black leather coat, his back to her. His right arm was heavily cast, while his left hand flipped through a document written entirely in English. Besides him, 6 or 7 elderly men in white coats stood in the room. Shin Rubing recognized one of them instantly. That's the world's top brain specialist. Dear Herman, she exclaimed, the titan of medicine, who had treated heads of state from multiple countries, was now humbly bowing, reporting something to Lin Sha. Mr. Lin, your internal bleeding is largely under control, but the broken rib pierced too deep into the lung. You still need rest. Additionally, regarding the global medical port layout you mentioned, we've drafted a preliminary plan, Dr. Herman said with utmost difference. Lin Xiao closed the document without turning around, merely waving his left hand lightly. The experts immediately understood and filed out, not even sparing Shin Rubing a glance as they passed. The room fell into a dead silence. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, spilling onto Lin Xiao's shoulders. Yet, it couldn't dispel the suffocating chill that clung to him. Have a seat, Captain Shin, Lin Xiao said. His voice was calm, devoid of the joy of reunion or the satisfaction of revenge. Only a cold, businesslike indifference. Shin Rubing walked to his side, gazing at his pale yet sharply defined profile. She opened her mouth, but found herself unable to utter even a simple, I'm sorry. Does the wound still hurt? Shin Rubing finally managed to squeeze out that pointless question. After a long pause, Lin Sha turned his head, his deep eyes fixed on her calmly. Did you check the surveillance footage? Captain Shin Rubing lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. I saw it. Lin Shurao, why didn't you tell me? If you had said earlier that the money came from you, if you had told me that the car accident that day was because you were saving me, and what if I had? Lin Sha interrupted, a hint of self-mockery in his tone. Tell you and then make you choose between saving me and saving Jianggu. Shin Rubing, you graduated top of your class at the police academy. Your instincts and judgment shouldn't be this poor. Shin Ruob's face turned pale instantly. Jianggu, he said he was terrified. I saw him trembling all over. He had every reason to tremble. Lin Shurao sneered. His left hand picked up a USB drive from the table and tossed it lightly in front of Shin Rubing. That's the trajectory of Jianggu's Porsche before the collision. Captain Shin, as a traffic officer, you can go back and study it carefully. Why would a car driving normally suddenly swerve toward the guardrail with no obstacles in sight? And at that angle, it made him look like he was on the brink of death without actually plunging into the river. Shin Rubing's head shot up. Are you saying he did it on purpose? Whether he did it on purpose, you can investigate yourself. But one thing is certain. The truck that caused our accident belongs to a transport company that received a massive overseas transfer just half a month ago, and the account's location matches the city where Jianga studied abroad. Lin Shirao stood up, though his body was still weak. His 185-meter frame exuded a pressure that made Xin Rubing shudder. He walked over to her, extended his left hand, and lightly brushed the insignia on her police uniform. Xin Rubing, you've been in this position for too long. It seems you've forgotten that the hardest thing to measure in this world is the human heart. You thought Jin Ku was your savior, but in reality, he might just be a madman trying to use you to swallow the Shin family or even get rid of me. Impossible. Jin Ku doesn't have the guts, Xin Rubing muttered to herself, but even she could hear the wavering in her own voice. Whether he has the guts or not, you'll see the answer at tomorrow night's Jianging business banquet. Lin Shao sat back down in his chair, closed his eyes to rest, and spoke with a distant tone. Now you can leave. I'm tired. Xin Ruob looked at this man, once so familiar to her. He was right in front of her. Yet, it felt like there was an insurmountable distance between them. Lin Shirao, can we really not go back? Lin Sha didn't open his eyes, but a cold curve formed at the corner of his lips. Xin Rubing, the moment we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, we were already in two different worlds. And tell your mother for me, don't cause trouble at Street Mary's again, because next time Ginjin might not just slap her. She might slap the entire future of the Shin family. When Xin Rubing walked out of the hospital room, it felt as though her soul had been drained from her body. The sunlight in the corridor was blinding, yet she felt an icy chill all over. Just as she was about to step into the elevator, her phone vibrated violently. It was Jang Cook calling. Rubing, where are you for tomorrow night's banquet? I specially ordered $1 million gown for you. We're going to steal the show, and that Mr. Lin will be there, too. I'm confident I can win him over. Listening to Jing's excited voice on the phone, Xin Rubing suddenly felt a wave of nausea. She glanced at the USB drive in her hand, her gaze sharpening. The truth was being peeled back layer by layer, and the world she thought she knew was crumbling inch by inch under Lin Zhao's cold stare. The Golden Hall of the Jianging Peninsula Hotel. This was the heart of power in Jiang. Every inch of marble floor seemingly soaked in the scent of money. Tonight, a high-profile charity business gala was underway. But anyone with half a brain knew the charity was just a front. The real main event was the legendary big shot making his return. The mysterious Mr. Lin, the shadowy controller of the Shilong Group's Jiangqing branch. Tonight, he would choose his first strategic partner in the city. Xin Rubing wore a special security uniform, the tactical belt cinching her slender yet rigid silhouette. As tonight's head of security, she stood on the second-floor circular corridor, her sharp eyes scanning the entire venue. Yet, her gaze involuntarily drifted to the Shan family members huddled in a corner of the first-floor lobby. Her father Shundihai was currently weaving through the guests with a sycophantic smile plastered on his face. That pathetic, growling demeanor stirred a pang of inexplicable bitterness and unease in Xin Rubing. The Shan family's business had indeed hit serious trouble. They had relied on Lin Shao's covert blood transfusions to maintain a facade of respectability. But with his withdrawal of funds after the divorce, that flimsy veil was being ripped away fast. Dehi, I heard your Shin family's cash flow is a bit tight lately. If you can't secure Mr. Lin's investment tonight, you might not even make next month's interest payments, right? A rival competitor said, raising his glass with a sarcastic tone as he passed by. Shandihi rubbed his hands awkwardly. Not at all. Not at all. Arubing has a close relationship with Jiangu from the Jiang family. Jin Ku has already put in a word with Mr. Lin. Tonight's investment, the Shin family is a shoo-in. Not far away, Jiangu was surrounded by a group of second-tier wealthy heirs. He wore an expensive sapphire blue suit, swirling a glass of champagne with an air of smug confidence. Young Master Jiang, when Mr. Lin comes out later, you've got to put in a good word for us. Easy, easy, replied, basking in his glory, but his gaze drifted past the crowd. greedily fixating on Shin Rubing upstairs, then scanning the room as if searching for an outlet for his ego. Suddenly, a slight commotion rippled at the entrance of the hall. I had shed my plain casual clothes and now wore a custom-made jet black suit. Peering at the door, the suit was impeccably tailored, perfectly outlining my cold, imposing figure, though my right hand remained slightly stiff, hidden inside the sleeve, the bone-deep aura of authority, the pressure of someone long accustomed to power, made the security guard hesitate for a beat before even checking my invitation. Ignoring the complex stares around me, I strode straight toward the lounge area. Well, if it isn't Arzhan family's former house husband, Lin Sha. A grating voice rang out. Jiangu. Flanked by a few cronies swarmed around me like hyenas catching the scent of blood. He looked me up and down, letting out a sneer. Where'd you rent that suit? Must have cost you a pretty penny. Lin Xia, you don't actually think that after the divorce, throwing on a decent piece of fabric gets you into this circle. Do you? The price of a ticket here alone would cover 3 years of grocery shopping for you back in the Shin family. Shirhai heard the commotion and walked over. Seeing it was me, his face instantly darkened. Lin Shirao, what are you doing here? Haven't you embarrassed the Shin family enough? Get the hell out of here before you offend the distinguished guests arriving soon. I looked calmly at Shundihai, the man I had called dad for 3 years, now staring at me with nothing but undisguised disgust. I'm here to take back what's mine, I said flatly. Your things. Every penny of the Shin family was earned by robbing through hard work. You're a kept man. What could possibly be yours? Before Shin's father could speak, Shun's mother appeared from somewhere, the swelling on her face from the beating at street. Mary's hospital was still visible now, twisted and grotesque under a thick layer of foundation. Oh, I get it now. You saw our family is about to get rich, so you came crawling back to beg for a remarriage. Didn't you? Let me tell you. No way. I ignored her ranting, letting my gaze sweep past the crowd to Shin Rubing, who stood behind the railing on the second floor. She was staring at me intently, her eyes a mix of shock, complexity, and a hint of panic she hadn't even realized herself. Master Zhang. The stray dog sneaked into Freelo. Why not just have security throw him out? One of Zhang Ku's lackeys suggested. Jean Ku adjusted his bow tie with a pompous air and raised his voice naturally. But since Brother Lin wants to see the world, I'm not one to deny him. Lin Xiao, if you kneel right here, admit you're a thief who stole from the Shan family and swear never to pester Rubing again. I'll reward you with a chance to clean the glasses after the banquet. How about that? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Lin Shirao, just leave while you can. Shin Rubing finally couldn't hold back. Rushing down from the second floor, she stood before me, her voice low and conflicted. This isn't where you belong. Jiangu is tight with Mr. Lin's people now. He'll really humiliate you. I looked at her, a cold smile curling at the corner of my lips. Captain Shin, are you afraid I'll be embarrassed? Or afraid I'll shatter your perfect life? You, Shin Rubing, was at a loss for words. Just then, the heavy rosewood doors at the front of the hall slowly swung open. The entire venue fell into instant silence. Xiao Chongshan, the president of the Jiangqing Chamber of Commerce, a man who usually strutted like a tyrant on the news, now hunched his back like a servant, humbly guiding a group of people into the venue. He's here. Mr. Lin is here. Jiangu excitedly straightened his clothes, his eyes blazing with fervor, dragging Shin's father forward. Rubing, Uncle Shin, hurry. Come with me to welcome Mr. Lin. This is the moment that decides the Shin family's fate. Shin Rubing was pulled and shoved to the front of the crowd. Shirao Chongshan stepped up to the microphone, his expression solemn and respectful. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have the honor of hosting Mr. Lin of the Shaowang Group. Mr. Lin has returned to Jiangning to select a deep investment plan. Now, let us welcome Mr. Lin to the stage. All eyes locked onto the entrance. Yet, no new big shot appeared at the door. Xiao Chongshan scanned the room, his gaze finally landing on the corner of the hall. on the figure being mocked by the crowd and driven away by the Shan family. He jogged over, weaving through the crowd in a dead silence, and stopped abruptly before me under the horrified stares of everyone. He bowed deeply at a 90 degrees angle. "Mr. Lin, everything is ready. Please take the stage to oversee the proceedings." In that moment, the entire Golden Hall seemed to have its mute button pressed. The champagne glass in Janka's hand clattered to the floor, shattering into pieces. The splashing liquid stained his $1 million suit. But he didn't notice. His eyes bulging like a dead fish's, his lips trembling violently. Shandihi's hand, extended for a handshake, froze midair like a ridiculous statue. And Shin Rubing, she felt as if a white light had exploded in her brain, all her understanding crumbling in that single second. Lin Xiao, the man who washed her clothes every day, made her hangover soup, and was scolded by her as mediocre, unambitious. Was he the master of the Xiaolong group, who could summon clouds and rain with a flick of his hand? I adjusted my cuffs, ignoring the petrified crowd around me, as I ascended the steps one by one. Each crisp footfall on the marble struck like a hammer against the hearts of the Shin family. I took the microphone from Xiao Chongshan and stood at the very center of the spotlight. Someone just asked what I came to take back. I swept my gaze across the room, letting it linger for a moment on the faces of the Shan family. The coldness in my eyes nearly caused Mrs. Shan to faint on the spot. 3 years ago, I was entrusted with a task and hid myself within the Shin family. I gave you countless chances to rise to the top, but you seem to prefer living in a dream. I pulled a dark gold folder from my chest. It was the investment proposal that the Shan family had begged and scraped for, using every connection they had to submit. This proposal. Jangu said he had it in the bag. I looked at Junku, whose face was deathly pale in the audience. His legs gave out and he collapsed to the floor with a hissing sound from his throat, unable to utter a single word before the eyes of the city's elite. I tore the document into shreds with an expressionless face. The white paper fragments fluttered down like a belated memorial. From this moment on, all supply chains in Jiang City related to the Xiaolong Group are strictly forbidden from any business dealings with the Shun and Jiang families. Anyone who disobeys will be my enemy. Mr. Shan's body trembled violently. He couldn't catch his breath and collapsed into Mrs. Shin's arms. I set down the microphone and prepared to leave the stage. Lin Xiao Shin Ruob's voice, choked with tears, pierced the hall like a shard of glass. She pushed past the bodyguards, rushed to the bottom of the steps, and looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "You've been lying to me all along, haven't you? You watched me struggle like a fool out there, watched me beg for the Shin family's business, and you stood behind me, cold and indifferent, watching me fall into the abyss. Did you think it was fun?" I stopped and looked down at her from above. Shin Rubing, 3 years ago, I gave the Shan family a chance to change their fate. My voice was low, but carried a bone-chilling coldness. It was an exclusive authorization for a trade deal. If you had signed it, the Shan family would now be the top family in Jiang City. But on the day I handed the contract to your father, you were out celebrating Jing's birthday. Your father didn't even glance at it. He threw it into the shredder and called me a delusional waste. Shin Rubing froze. Her mind raced, digging through her memories to unearth that detail. From that day on, I knew the Shin family didn't deserve that future. I walked past her toward the backstage monitoring room. "Lin Shirao, stop. You saved my life and I cleared your name. But you can't destroy the Shin family like this." Shin Rubing screamed hysterically behind me. I didn't look back. It wasn't me who destroyed the Shin family. It was their greed, ignorance, and arrogance entering the monitoring room. Yuing Yen was already waiting. "Master, we've traced the changes in Jiang Ku's private accounts, just as you predicted." Before the banquet began, he had a secret meeting with a senior executive of the Shan family involving an illegal transfer of the Shin family's core technology. Also regarding the disappearance of that opportunity. 3 years ago, I found evidence. Shandihi didn't ignore the contract. He swapped it out and secretly sold it to the Shan family sworn enemy. pocketing the money to cover his gambling debts. I stared at the screen where Mr. Sean's face was a mix of despair and terror. My eyes were ice cold. Sean Rubing thinks her family is just mediocre. She doesn't realize this family is rotten to the core. I lit a cigarette watching the smoke rise in front of the monitors. Notify Han Ling. The legal process can begin. I want Jiang Xiu to leave tonight with more than just humiliation. He'll carry shackles for the rest of his life. Understood. On the screen, the banquet hall was in chaos. Sean Rubing was slumped helplessly at the foot of the steps while Jiangu was attempting to sneak out of the venue. I stubbed out my cigarette. The real show was only just entering its second act. Jiangqing City Traffic Police Brigade Interrogation Room 3. This was a place Shin Rubing once commanded with absolute authority. She was the Ice Queen, the embodiment of discipline and justice. But today, the air in the interrogation room was suffocatingly heavy. The 8 characters on the wall, leniency for confession, severity for resistance, glared harshly under the stark, shadowless lights. I sat in the shadows across from the interrogation table, draped in a dark cashmere coat, my fingertips tapping lightly against the cold surface. To my left, Jiangu was cuffed to a specialized interrogation chair. His once pristine suit was now crumpled, cold sweat dripping from his temples and pooling into a small puddle on the table. Rubing, help me. This must be a misunderstanding. Lin Shirao is getting back at me. He's fabricating evidence. Jiangu screamed frantically at the one-way glass of the interrogation room. He knew Shin Rubing was watching from behind it. I ignored his barking and turned my gaze to the man beside me who was organizing documents. That was Han Ling, known in legal circles as the Butcher. He never took a case with less than a 99% chance of winning. Once he struck, his opponents didn't just lose everything. They usually got a complimentary luxury iron bar package. Master Lin, the evidence chain is complete, Han Ling said, his voice devoid of emotion. He slid a thick file across the table to Jiangu. Mr. Jiang, based on the evidence we've gathered, the traffic accident 3 days ago was no accident. A week before the incident, you transferred 2 million yuan to the wife of the truck driver through an offshore account. Additionally, 3 days before the crash, your Porsche underwent precision modifications to its braking system, ensuring that upon high-speed impact, the dash cam would trigger its victim protection mode. By legal definition, this constitutes insurance fraud and attempted manslaughter. You're lying. Jiang's voice was, his eyes bloodshot. I did it to save Rubing. I'm the hero. I finally spoke, slowly rising to my feet. I walked over to Jiangu, leaning down to lock eyes with him. Those eyes, once filled with tenderness and restraint, were now as deep as an abyss, carrying a bone-chilling coldness. Jiangu, your biggest mistake was underestimating my patience and overestimating your own intelligence. Did you think the rain that night could wash away every trace? You didn't know that all the high-definition cameras on that stretch of road had been upgraded 6 months ago by a tech subsidiary of the Shirao Group. You thought you'd chosen a blind spot, but under our infrared lenses, every move you made was as obvious as a clown performing in broad daylight. I turned to look at the one-way glass, my voice low but loud enough for the person behind it to hear clearly. Captain Shin, do you want to keep watching? The door to the interrogation room swung open. Shin Rubing walked in, her steps heavy, each one as if treading on knives. She held a freshly delivered internal memo, her face paler than paper. Lin Shirao, the provincial department just called. Shin Rubing looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. They said that the 5 major unsolved cases I handled over the past 3 years were only cracked because a mysterious expert panel provided core data support behind the scenes. And now, because that panel has revoked all authorization proofs, those 5 first-class and second-class merit awards are facing reevaluation. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling uncontrollably. That expert panel. It was yours, too, wasn't it? I said. Nothing. Just stared at her coldly. Why? Shinabing suddenly broke down. She slammed her hand on the table and shouted at me. You're clearly this powerful. You could stand in the sunlight and fight alongside me. Why do you pretend to be useless? Why do you watch me like a joke? Accepting honors that don't belong to me with a clear conscience? Are you just watching the show? Watching your wife dance in the palm of your hand? Does that give you a sense of accomplishment? Honors that don't belong to you. I let out a cold laugh, my gaze sharpening. Shin Rubing, when you were drinking red wine at the celebration banquet, accepting compliments from your colleagues, but locking me out, saying that the grocery shopping husband, Ryer of cooking oil and would embarrass you. Did you ever stop to think where those achievements came from? I pointed at Zhang Xiu, my tone growing icier when you sneered at me in the hospital for the sake of this man who meticulously orchestrated a murder. Did you ever consider that if I hadn't been shielding you from all the open and covert attacks of the Shin family for the past 3 years, you, the so-called goddess of the police force, would have been dragged down by the Shin family's pile of rotten debts long ago? Shin Rubing staggered, nearly falling for 3 years. She had believed she was heaven's favored daughter, a miracle of the police force. She even thought Lin Shirao wasn't good enough for her, that he was too lowly and lacked ambition. But the truth was that Lin Sha had channeled all the brilliance onto her while hiding in the shadows, becoming her shadow, her shield, and she had shattered that shield with her own hands. Django, now it's your turn. I stopped looking at Shin Rubing and refocused on Jiangu. Lin Shirao, you can't kill me. This is a society governed by law. Jin Ku recoiled in terror. Rubing, save me. I did all this for you. I just loved you too much. I wanted you to see that I'm more useful than Lin Sha. Love. I snapped my fingers. Han Ling immediately turned on the multimedia projector in the interrogation room. On the screen appeared, not the car accident, but secret recordings and videos of Jiangu abroad. In the video, Jiangu was holding a seductive foreign woman, swirling a glass of red wine, his face full of venom. That Shin woman is just a tool. Once I've dealt with the Shin family, gotten my hands on Shan Dihai's technical patent, and killed off that live-in son-in-law Lin Shirao, Shan Rubing will have no choice but to obey me. Then I'll transfer the Shan family's assets and return to the country. Who would even remember who she is? Jiang Ku burst into manic laughter in the video. Dead silence filled the interrogation room. Shin Rubing stared at the video, looking as if she had been struck by lightning. The man she had always regarded as her true love, her confidant, had been treating her as nothing more than a stepping stone to be discarded at will. This is your love, I said, looking at Jiangu. Hangu. As for the Shin family's patent, Shun Dihai mortgaged it to me 3 days ago for a paltry 5 million to cover his gambling debts. In other words, the thing you schemed so hard to get is now sitting in my trash bin. No, impossible. Uncle Shan promised me. Zhang collapsed into his chair, his gaze completely hollow. Oh, and one more thing. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. Did you think your tens of millions in overseas investments were paying off? Actually, the financial advisor handling your portfolio works for me right now. Not only are you going to prison, but you also owe the Zheilong Group 300 million in debt. Even if you die in prison, your family will never be able to pay off that debt because of your joint guarantee. Django let out a desperate howl, foaming at the mouth before fainting on the spot. Take him away. I waved my hand. Several black-suited bodyguards who had been waiting along with the supervising officers outside entered and dragged Jiang Ku out of the interrogation room like a dead dog. Only Shin Rubing and I remained in the room. She stood there dazed. The police uniform she once wore with pride now felt heavier than a .000 pound pressing down on her, so she couldn't lift her head. Lin Xia, I was wrong. She finally broke down crying. Tears smeared her makeup, making her look utterly pathetic. Please give me one more chance. I don't want those honors anymore, and I don't want the Shin family either. Can we remarry? Let's go back to that home. I'll cook for you every day from now on. I'll make up for all the 3 years I owed you. I walked up to her, reaching out my hand as if to pat her head like I used to. A flicker of hope lit up in Shin Rubing's eyes, and she tremblingly closed them, waiting for that familiar touch. But my hand only straightened her crooked collar pin. Captain Shin, this uniform no longer suits you, I said flatly, without a trace of emotion. You violated police discipline by illegally accessing surveillance footage for Jianggu. I've already submitted a signed complaint to the inspectorate. Shin Rubing, as a citizen, I'm asserting my rights as a victim. I demand a fair judgment. From today onward, you're no longer the traffic police captain. You're just a public official under investigation. You're going to destroy my career with your own hands. Shin Yuebing stared at me in disbelief. It wasn't me who destroyed your career. It was you. I turned and walked toward the door, my black trench coat cutting a cold arc through the air. When you saved Jiang Ka back then, you destroyed the last shred of affection I had for you. Now I'm just taking back everything that was never rightfully yours. Lin Shurao, how can you be so heartless? Shin Rubing screamed hysterically behind me. I didn't look back. Heartless? If I were truly heartless, I would have let go of the steering wheel the moment the crash happened, sending her and Jiang straight to meet their maker. I stepped out of the brigade headquarters. The air outside was cool and refreshing like water. Yuing Yen was waiting by the car, handing me the latest report. Master Shandihe is already surrounded by debt collectors in the villa. All of the Shin family's properties, vehicles, and their shares have been seized and sealed by the court 10 minutes ago. Also, the video of old Master Shen's final testament has been fully restored. I took the tablet and watched the footage of the kind old man. It was the scene from 3 years ago, just before old Master Shen passed away. Master, the last words old Master Shan wanted to say to you might not be what you imagined. Guqing Yen said quietly. I stared at the screen, my fingertips trembling. Slightly. Take me to the Shan family's old mansion. I ordered coldly. That was where it all began. And it would be where it all ended. What the Shan family owed me wasn't just those 3 years of wasted youth and endurance. The truth hidden under the guise of repaying a favor was long overdue to be fully exposed. The rain in Jiangqing had always been unreasonable. It had started last night, and by this evening, it showed no signs of letting up. Instead, it grew even more violent. Huge raindrops slammed against the all-glass curtain wall of the Xiaolong Group headquarters, producing a dull, dense, crackling sound like thousands of war drums beating in unison. I stood at the top floor of the building, 300 m above sea level, in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was the highest point in Jiang. Looking down, the city's neon lights blurred and fractured through the rain like a shattered palette. Once I thought this city was vast, vast enough to hide 3 years of my mediocrity. Now I realized it was small, so small that with just a flick of my fingers, I could wipe out a few families entirely. Young master, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Yuing Yen walked up behind me holding a warm cup of black coffee. The guests downstairs have all arrived. Every influential figure in Jiang City's political and business circles wants to witness the coronation of the new king. At this very moment, I took the coffee, feeling the warmth of the porcelain cup through my fingertips. But my gaze remained fixed on the street below, teeming like an anthill. Is she here? I asked flatly. Guingyi hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She's downstairs. The Shan family's old mansion was forcibly sealed off this afternoon. Shun Dihai has been taken in for investigation on charges of illegally transferring technology patents and long-term involvement in underground gambling. Shun's mother threw a tantrum at the old mansion's gate, but was taken away by several creditors for a talk. As for Shin Rubing, she stood in the rain for 3 hours. I let out a cold laugh and said nothing. Most importantly, Ginjin lowered her voice. She's wearing the wedding dress she married you in 3 years ago. It's outdated now and soaked through by the rain. But she's kneeling at the company's main entrance, refusing to leave no matter who tries to persuade her. I took a sip of the coffee, the bitterness spreading across my tongue. Wearing a wedding dress to beg for mercy. Shin Rubing, you've fallen into the cliché. After all, 3 years ago, You thought this dress was a shackle binding your flight. 3 years later, you cling to it as a lifeline to salvage your power. Let her come up. I set down the coffee cup, my voice as cold as the rain outside the window. I'll meet her on the rooftop terrace at the highest point in Jiang City. I'll hold a proper funeral for this absurd past on the top floor terrace of the skyscraper. The wind hauled fiercely. When Shin Rubing appeared in my line of sight, I barely recognized her. The once proud, aloof traffic police captain, always in her crisp uniform, was gone. In her place stood a drenched, disheveled woman. The pristine white wedding dress was now heavy and gray, soaked through by the rain, dragging behind her like a rotting cloth. Her hair clung messily to her face, her once delicate features purple from the cold wind. She swayed unsteadily behind her. The gaze of Jiang City's elite bore down. My ceremony had arranged a fully transparent observation deck, and now countless eyes filled with mockery, pity, and anticipation were fixed on this former goddess of Jiang City. Lin Shurao. Shin Rubing's voice was shattered by the wind. She staggered toward me, each step accompanied by the dull thud of her soaked shoes. I stood under the awning, hands clasped behind my back. My black suit was untouched by a single drop of rain, a cruel contrast to her disheveled state. Lin Sha, I beg you, let the Shin family go. Suddenly, her legs gave way, and she fell heavily to her knees 5 meters away from me. The sound of her knees hitting the concrete was still audible through the wind. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that before. I shouldn't have taken your efforts for granted. I shouldn't have abandoned you during the car accident. She sobbed heart-wrenchingly, tears and rain mingling together. Tell me, what do you want? As long as you let my father go and give the Shan family a way out, I'll do anything. She looked up abruptly, a desperate madness in her eyes. I can quit being a police officer. I can stay home every day like before. I can give you children. I swear I'll listen to you for the rest of my life. Please give me back the Lin Sha I used to know. Okay. I looked at her, feeling not a single ripple in my heart, not even the thrill of revenge, only a deep hollow weariness. Shin Rubing, are you misunderstanding something? I stepped out from under the awning, letting the rain soak my coat as I looked down at her from above. Do you think I destroyed the Shin family because I still hate you? Because I still care about your betrayal back then? She froze, staring at me blankly. You're wrong. I crouched down, meeting her eyes filled with pleading. I destroyed the Shan family because it was a cancer embedded in Jiang City's commercial chain. Shandihi's greed, Jiangku venom, and your arrogance. Even without me, all of this would have erupted at some point. I just accelerated the process. As for you, I reached out, my fingertip lightly lifting the tarnished, cheap brooch pinned to her chest. Did you think wearing this wedding dress would rekindle some warmth deep inside me? Shin Rubing, your thirst for power has even crushed your dignity. That's what I despise most about you. No, that's not true. I love you, Lin Sha. I really do love you. She struggled to grab the hem of my coat, but I sidestepped, dodging her grasp. Love. I stood up, letting out a mocking laugh. Shin Ruabobbing, you don't even know what love is. What you loved was the shadow who would always tolerate you, serve you, provide emotional value without expecting anything in return. When you realized that shadow was actually a god you could never reach, your love came belatedly. That's not love. It's resentment, fear of loss. I turned and walked toward the edge of the rooftop where a massive LED screen sat in standby mode. Master, the video is ready. Ginjian appeared beside me holding a remote control. Play it. Some truths now that we're at the end don't need to be hidden anymore. The screen lit up. It was 3 years ago in the study of the Shin family's old mansion. The day before old Master Shan passed away. The footage was a bit blurry, but the kind old man's voice was crystal clear in the video. Old Master Shan was holding my hand. His eyes were sharp, nothing like those of a confused patient. Lin Shurao, I put you through a lot. The old master in the video sided. I know who you are. the crown prince of the Zheilong group. Hiding your identity and coming to Jiang City to uncover the truth behind your mother's car accident years ago. It was me, an old man who used a life-saving favor I did for your father long ago to force you to stay by Ruob's side. Shin Rubing froze, staring at the screen, forgetting to breathe. The old master in the video continued. Rubing was spoiled by me. She looks down on everyone but can't see through anyone's heart. I was afraid that after I was gone, someone like Jin Siyu would devour her completely. Lin Shurao, I beg you to protect her for 3 years. These 3 years count as repayment for the Shin family's favor. After 3 years, if she still doesn't get it, if you still decide to leave, then the Shin family deserves its fate. Don't feel guilty. It's the path she chose. The video ended abruptly. I turned around and looked at Shin Rubing, whose face was ashen. Did you hear that clearly? I said calmly. These 3 years of marriage were essentially a transaction. I endured 3 years of humiliation and protected the Shan family to repay old Master Shan for saving my father's life. I saved you, took care of you, endured your family's insults, not because I was groveling, but because I was fulfilling a contract. So the moment I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the contract ended. I don't owe the Shin family anything, and I certainly don't owe you, Shan Rubing, any feelings. So that's how it is. Shin Rubing muttered, utterly lost. The so-called marriage of gratitude she had always prided herself on turned out to be a shield her grandfather had bought with his dignity. And she, under that very shield, had trampled without mercy on the only person who could save her life. Lin Sha, I'm begging you, for the last time. She slumped in a puddle, her wedding dress completely stained black by the mud. Even if there's no love, for Grandpa's sake, don't let my father go to prison. He's old. He can't take it. I've already handed over all the evidence of Shandihai's illegal embezzlement of public funds and his collusion with Jianggu to the police. I said coldly, looking at her. The law is just. Shin Rubing, as a former police officer, you should know that better than I do. The Shin family owes the investors of Jiangqing. That debt must be repaid. And Shindihai owes the law. That debt must be repaid. 2. I didn't look at her again. I turned and walked toward the entrance to the rooftop. Lin Sha, do you really have to be this ruthless? She screamed behind me, her voice tearing through the air. I stopped but didn't turn around. Shin Rubing, this is the truest logic of a male power fantasy. When dignity is trampled to the breaking point, counterattack no longer needs mercy. You should be grateful that I only took your future and your family, fortune, and didn't leave you completely in the dark like you did to me after your car accident. I stepped into the elevator just as the doors were closing. I caught my last glimpse of Shin Rubing. She was wearing that ridiculous wedding dress, sitting alone on the rain-lashed rooftop, surrounded by the most dazzling backdrop of Jiangchun. Yet it made her look like a ghost abandoned by the times on the first floor of the building. The celebration officially began. I changed into a dark gold suit and walked onto the stage under the gaze of the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, from today onward, there is no longer a Shan family or a Jiang family in Jiang. The Jiangqing branch of the Shaolong Group will be officially renamed the Shaolong Global Strategic Center. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. I took the champagne handed to me by Uncle Su and gazed out at the river in the distance. The storm in Zhanging had subsided, but my journey was just beginning. The challenge letters from several old-line financial conglomerates overseas were already sitting on my desk. The games there would be far more thrilling than those in this small Jianging. Power, wealth, dignity. What I had lost, I had already reclaimed tenfold. What I wanted in the future, I would forge with my own hands. As for Shin Rubing, as for those 3 years filled with the smell of cooking oil and humiliation, let them rot completely in the mud of Jiangchong. Washed away by this rain, as I walked out of the hall, Uncle Su opened a black umbrella for me. Young master, the next stop is London. The private jet is ready. Let's go. I got into the Rolls-Royce, and the window slowly rose. The windshield wipers swung rhythmically, wiping away the last traces of water on the glass. Before me, the world was clear and bright. The end.